Welcome to the June 18, 2019 episode of Reactive Consciousness, our in-depth podcast about what happened this week in our lives. I'm your host, vysethebold, and this is...
Lotus Prince.
And OldManStompy.
So, the non-OG 3 is back again.
The non-orange juice spelled wrong 3.
Alright, I thought we were doing the 4 Heroes of Light for this one, but I guess...
The number 1 4 Heroes of Light cast.
Possibly the only people on the planet who, still refer to that game on a regular basis.
I don't know. I mean, Octopath Traveler just came out on Steam. There's some relevance, right?
Well, I mean, you don't need to know the lineage of the game, right? You don't need to know, everything that they did. Frankly, I would recommend that you do, in fact, ignore everything that they did before Octopath Traveler, and probably also Octopath Traveler.
Including Bravely Default.
It's alright.
But anyway, we should actually start talking. So about plenty of stuff that happened this week. We actually have a lot to go over. So I guess we'll start off with Nintendo's E3 because that is the most significant part of what happened this week after we talked about Devolver and Xbox last week, right?
Yeah, at that point, that was all that had happened in E3 so far.
Mm-hmm.
Devolver had just finished the presentation while we were recording the podcast, so anything that happened after that, I mean, yeah, of course we heard it when it happens, but we're recording the podcast weekly, so now we can finally cover it long after every other news network has.
Well, I mean, it's mostly about our commentary on the issue. We're not breaking it to anybody.
Breaking story 5 days later.
But I do want to have a few little updates here that on Xbox's stuff, because they did issue some extra stuff after their keynote. So I did want to quickly go over that. So first of all, PSO2, Phantasy Star Online 2, which is thankfully coming to America and in English and all. Is coming to all platforms, PC and all consoles, not just Xbox.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't know it for sure at the time because it was an Xbox conference, but it was likely that it was coming to the other platforms, and sure enough, yes, Sony didn't have a panel at all, so we had to wait for later information.
Well, keep in mind that Microsoft is the most open of all of them. Yeah. So in terms of they only have an icy relationship with Sony.
Yeah.
So it fits their MO. But I also wanted to touch on I have been going over backwards compatibility almost every week, when something significant comes out. And I wanted to go over some significant additions because they're the last of the additions as well of the old consoles. They confirmed that the new system, the Scarlet, will be compatible with all backwards compatible games thus far, for all the way going back to the original Xbox and the current 360 games, and all Xbox One games. And Xbox One X games, obviously. So that's really, really cool. The new system will have 4 systems of lineage on it, including its current one. So that's really neat. They did, though, however, announce that their final backwards compatible games are going to be released right now. And they released a ton of them, and there are some significant ones. So I'll go over them. For the original Xbox, the Splinter Cell series was very important to the success of the original Xbox. It was on other systems, but it was best on Xbox, and also only online with the second game on forward. With Xbox. It was one of the tentpole Xbox Live titles on the original system. It was basically Splinter Cell, Pandora Tomorrow, and Halo 2 were the 2 big games at the time. So all 4 of the Splinter Cell games on the Xbox, on the original Xbox, are now backwards compatible, which is very significant. Those are good games too. They're still worth going back to if you like that sort of thing. Armed and Dangerous was a big surprise. So this is a LucasArts title, one of their last original titles, original IP titles, which is really cool. I really enjoyed this game back in the day. It is dated, but it has some really funny cutscenes. Probably the PC version is probably running a little tough right now, so this will be a convenient way to play it. LucasArts also included another game, which is Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb, which is an Xbox original Xbox exclusive. So that's pretty cool too. Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy, which was a fun Zelda-like game.
Yeah, Unreal was pretty great. I played it on GameCube back in the day.
Yeah, very good game. It was best on Xbox with the best graphics. So
I think it was on everything, right? It was on PS2 as well.
And PC too. I think you could still get it on PC, but this is a good way to play it. I should also add that the way that the backwards compatibility works with the Xbox, almost all the games run better than their original counterparts, which is amazing considering emulation usually is a downgrade. But they usually improve performance, so they probably play better than their PC counterparts.
I don't want to say that. Like, I mean, emulation usually eventually becomes an upgrade. It's just that sometimes that by itself is considered to be a negative. You know, like when an emulator is relatively new and when it stresses the limits of the hardware, then it's a problem. But like, like for example, you know, the Higan and BSNES emulator project. Like, a lot of the reason why they need to get that like absolutely perfect is because there are like a couple of things that are very difficult to emulate just because no one's ever attempted to like emulate certain tips before. But otherwise you tend to like get games running without glitches that used to exist. You tend to get like anti-aliasing that makes up for the fact that you're playing it on an emulator and not on like a CRT. Like you get all these benefits. You get like there's a Virtual Boy emulator which is actually like watchable. Like you could play it without getting a headache. And that's but you can also play it with the 3D with like 3D glasses. That's pretty cool. I don't want to say that it's strictly a downgrade. I'm not surprised that Microsoft, having worked with the PC architecture like all the way through the lifetime of the Xbox, has managed to get things working pretty well.
Well, let me backtrack a little bit. Historically, it's been probably until the Virtual Console, probably not the best solution, but things are a lot better now. Unless you have high quality emulation in anything now, whenever you're presenting an old title, it's going to be lambasted by the community and the people that love it. So I think they've learned their lessons with these sort of things, and I'm mostly calling back to the days of the Xbox 360 and how it emulated the original Xbox games. It did not do them justice. There was a lot of glitching. So I'm happy to say that the best way of playing these games are on the current systems.
Just to like very quickly double click on that, I do appreciate, for example, on the SNES Classic, it has this like blur filter, which is actually much more useful than you'd think it would be. Like it's kind of obvious that it's there if you're used to playing the games in the Super Nintendo, but it's like really useful for people with visual sensitivity because the graphics are sharper than they normally would be on newer LCD screens than they were on the old CRT televisions. So having this additional blur filter makes the games more accessible. And, you know, that's really what this is about. Like, to me, the most important thing isn't about, like, pleasing people who played the game 30 years ago. It's about making them accessible to people who don't have the capacity to, you know, run a gaming machine just to, or like, the wherewithal or even the internet connectivity all the time, you know, to download terabytes of old ROMs or whatever. And, like, to do the research, you know, to be able to play these games, to follow the history of gaming and to like enjoy things that their, you know, predecessors used to enjoy and to find out for themselves why it was so fun to make that decision for themselves. So like I'm always excited that people who will buy a new Xbox console don't need to maintain 4 generations of systems. You know, you buy one console and you can buy, you know, 20 years of games, a lot of which are very easy to acquire. You know, they're very cheap. And you have it and like when the system comes out, you don't need to spend $60 a game to get something that you'll really enjoy, you know, or at least it won't be necessary. You know, you can have a lot of fun with the system right out of the box.
I agree on everything you said. Well put. So the final original Xbox title is Unreal Championship 2, which I'm sure will have its internet connectivity as well, Xbox Live connectivity, which is a cool throwback. That was a big game for the system as well. So you'll notice I said the final original Xbox game. Unfortunately, the most wanted game did not get included, which was Jet Set Radio Future, which is probably the most beloved title that did not get included, probably because of rights issues concerning the music. So that's a shame. Probably the best thing that we can hope for is like an HD re-release, kind of like what they did with the original Jet Set Radio, but with replacement tracks.
And I think that's the same thing with that and Sonic 3, right? Like that's the other game where they need to like totally wipe the soundtrack to re-release it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised they haven't done that already. Like, they maybe hired the guy who did the soundtrack for Sonic Mania,
right?
To maybe do a revised soundtrack for Sonic 3 and Knuckles, just so we can move forward. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just so people can at least play it. That maybe someday they can resolve the rights issues with. I'm assuming everybody's assuming it's having to do with Michael Jackson's estate, and they're probably correct. But there's never been a confirmation of it.
So it's available on Steam, I think.
It's
I
the
think you can
only.
still buy it. Yeah.
It's the only. Well, no, you can also buy it for Xbox.
I mean, a system that like still actively sells the game.
No, well, like I said, you could still buy it on Xbox One.
Okay.
Because it's on the 360 marketplace and it's backwards compatible. So you could still buy it on the Xbox marketplace. But those are the only two ways to get it, and those were both released before, I think, his death. That might not be exactly accurate, but I think the very last release was the Xbox One. Or the Steam one. I don't know.
This is important.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
People need to know.
It was around the same time, so whatever. So the remainder are Xbox 360 games, and they are some very good ones. So headlining them is Azura's Wrath, which is a favorite of ours. Love that game.
Yeah, it's freaking brilliant. That's one of the very few games, like very few, that I saw previews for it, and I was like, I'm getting this day one. I do not often get games day one, but I was super hyped for that one.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite games of last generation. It is not much of a game, but it's a great experience.
It's the greatest anime you'll ever play.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very cinematic game, and it's a lot of fun. And I assume all the DLC should be compatible, because almost every game has all their DLC compatible, except for a couple notable exceptions. Enslaved Odyssey to the West, very great game by Ninja Theory, which is still a good developer. This is probably their best game. I'm just going to go outright there and say it. This is a really, really good game. It's still available on PC, on Steam, but this will be a good way to play it. The original Far Cry, which is actually a pretty great feat. The original Far Cry did not get released on Xbox until much later into its life. It had like a couple spin-off games instead of the original Far Cry because it was particularly taxing. That's the original Crytek game. So anybody who's familiar with how taxing, what's that other game that they had? Crisis, yeah. I should have said that.
Oh, that was the game that at least weren't the first two PC only.
The first one was PC only for a very long time until much later.
Yeah, because I remember 3 coming right out on consoles, but I don't even remember 2.
2 and 3 were made with console in mind.
Okay.
Yeah, but 1 was ported to Xbox 360 much later, probably after 3 was released, something like that. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, they're known for their taxing games. Peter Jackson's King Kong, which is an interesting choice, but it was a pretty popular game at the time.
Isn't it called something insane, like Peter Jackson's King Kong, the movie of the game, or something? Or
the
game
official
of the movie?
Game of the movie, yes.
The official game of the movie, it's the game's called.
This was a very stunning game at the time. I'm surprised for a licensed title that it's there. To be
Yeah, like
honest.
that was one of those things I always saw on store shelves. I was like, who cares about a movie or a game adaptation of King Kong or whatever? But like, I saw some gameplay footage of early game. It's actually very impressive.
Yeah, and then you have Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo HD Remix, a great version of a great game.
Yeah, it was like a PS1 game, right? I mean, I know it's arcade, but like PS1.
Yeah. You're correct, but this is the HD remix, so
Okay.
good stuff. Prince of Persia: The Forgotten Sands, which is the fourth game. I believe
that was
all
a
of the
360 title, right?
Yes. So that is the fourth game in the original Prince series, and the other game that was just called Prince of Persia is compatible as well.
Oh, that one. Right. I forgot about that one.
Yeah, the one that's in between the third one and the fourth one is kind of this standalone spin-off game that's just called Prince of Persia. It's really confusing.
It's the third game, I think it's called Prince of Persia, right? The first one's not called the first new Prince of Persia isn't just called Prince of Persia.
Prince of Persia:
Time.
Sands of Time,
Okay.
Prince of Persia: Warrior Within, Prince of Persia: The Two Thrones, and I think there's I think there's a weird Wii game that's called something else. I don't know if it's canon or what.
But the next one is Infinite Undiscovery, which is I believe that's Square Enix's first 3D game or HD game. Pretty sure it's either that or Last Remnant, which we'll get to later.
Somehow.
Star Ocean: Last Hope, which is
The Star Ocean
another
4?
entry. Yeah, that's Star Ocean 4, I believe. Go ahead.
Star Ocean 4 is like fascinating to me. I was amazed that game came out because like I spoiler alert, but Star Ocean 3 ended with the cast of the game discovering that they were characters in a video game.
Yes.
And the video game got deleted and like
Yes.
and
That
I
was-
was like they made another game? Like
Like,
where were they going to go from there?
The only thing, like, Star Ocean 3 is the only Star Ocean I ever saw, so I thought that was actually really brilliant, but,
That's
like...
the PS2 game, right?
Apparently, yeah, PS2. But apparently if you'd played Star Ocean 1 and 2, he would have been, like, furious.
So, people get really attached to the universes of the games that they play, right? And to find out that those kind of narrative twists have to be done really carefully with a lot of artistic intent. Otherwise, you're going to feel like you're taking the whole universe and throwing it in the garbage because you're tired of making these games.
Well, yeah. All that epicness on the
And they
PS1
kept
didn't
making
matter.
them. That's the thing. They kept making them even after this. I mean, what are they up to 6 now?
I think the last one is the 5th one, but they have re-released the first 2 several times.
I didn't even know
Including
there was a fifth
one
one.
on Switch is coming out pretty soon,
Yeah,
too.
there's another re-release of the first game coming out, which is fine because the first one, it was supposed to be an exceptional Super Famicom game, but it never got translated. It was gigantic. It was like 48 megabits.
Yeah, the Switch one is a remake of the PSP game, I believe.
Are they ever
The
going to
PSP
re-release
remake.
Blue Sphere?
That's probably for the best. Do you mean like the Sega Genesis game, or do you mean
No, I'm not being cute this time. I mean the Game Boy Color game.
Yeah, nah, probably not. Enchanted Arms is the next title. So this was the first major Japanese RPG for the 360. This is the game that everybody was playing when the system had first come out, before a lot of the major Square Enix titles, and then the games like Lost Odyssey and Blue Dragon had come out for the system.
Funny about all these, this was about the console generation where I hit the inflection point where my personal responsibilities became onerous enough that I couldn't play every single JRPG that ever came out. So these are all the games that I would always see on the shelves and be like, I don't know when I'm going to have 40 free hours in the next year.
Yep.
To be honest, I'm just going to go right out and say it. These 3 are pretty forgettable. You probably get away with skipping over all 3 of these, to be honest, because you could spend your time playing Lost Odyssey if you've never played that, and that's a fantastic game. It's probably one of the best RPGs of that era, and it's very underlooked.
Ironically, it is. Well, I don't know if it's ironic, but it is Lost.
Yeah, I mean, I think that game is quite fun. Blue Dragon's a little...
I think that you could skip it too. It's incredibly slow. It's a really good game, and there are aspects of it. For example, they hired a professional writer to do these. Lost Odyssey is the story of an immortal, effectively, and it's an interesting gameplay decision because you literally can't die permanently. like in combat, if your main character dies, there are other characters who can get knocked out, but if your character dies, he'll just come back up after a couple of turns.
That's crazy.
Which is pretty interesting for an RPG. And there's like vignettes that get told during the storyline that describe what his life was like as an immortal, and about how he like interacts with different cultures in the world that you're exploring, and about how he like sees the people die. He sees the impact of like wars that he fought in, like jobs that he had generations ago. That is like the gem in that game. But it's kind of like what I always say about Monster Hunter, in that like when I play it, I feel like it's like a 30-hour game that takes 300 hours to play. Like Lost Odyssey is like, those are the good parts, like the the implications of what it means to be an immortal. That's like just like buried in like 60 hours of just like really generic and slow and grindy role-playing gameplay.
So or you could just watch The Highlander.
Yeah, or you could watch. Or, I mean, you could just watch the stories on YouTube, which to me is like my favorite method now of letting other people play video games for me.
Yeah, getting Lotus Prince to play.
Well, if I really want Lotus Prince to play a game, I'll go to his house,
for you.
And tell him to pull out his knife. and play a game for me.
Yeah, we're here. Also bring a knife.
Nobody but us. But anyway, we'll move on. Unreal Tournament 3. Another one of those Unreal Tournament games that were popular. This is a 360 game, so it's going to be, further in technology than Unreal Championship 2, of course. And you have Far Cry Instincts Predator, which is one of the Far Cry spin-offs that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And this is a big surprise. And why? Too Human.
Really?
Wow.
The Dennis Dyack classic that killed a company and got taken off store shelves because they lost a spiteful lawsuit against Unreal. I guess against Epic. So yeah, there you go.
So I would imagine that if any game company out there wants to find a way to spite Epic, they will find a way to do so.
Well, if you read about the saga of Too Human, you would be on Epic's side.
Oh, really?
Let's just put it that way.
So, like, traditionally, I would never want to be on Microsoft's side because, they, like, in the software industry, they were one of the original, like, big evil corporations. And, like, just because they have a CEO who's been, like, very nice recently and has done a lot of good things for, like, handicapped, accessible gamers, like, doesn't necessarily mean that I want to give them the benefit of the doubt all the time.
Well, you know that, they're 5 minutes away from getting a different CEO with everything in their stable, working for them, and where it could go with it, with all their power. So who knows? It's just like any other form of politics, I guess. Right. But anyway, let's move on because we got plenty more to talk about. We didn't even get to Nintendo yet, God. Plenty of stuff here. I'm just going to go over some of it quickly because it's the only way we're going to fit everything in. But Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is getting a sequel. That was probably the biggest announcement. However, there aren't many details other than the fact that it will use the same engine. There was a teaser trailer, and it looks like there's some co-op element with using Zelda, which is pretty neat.
One thing that I saw was pretty cool was that on Twitter, someone noted, and I noted this myself, like it's pretty obvious if you listen for it, but the music in the trailer sounded like it was played backwards. But what I did not realize is that someone on Twitter went ahead and played it in reverse, meaning kind of played it forwards.
Forward.
And I think it was like the Game Over theme from the original Zelda or something like that.
Jesus.
Like, shit's going down.
Yeah, it looks dark.
Yeah, it was claimed, the director claimed that it would be even darker than Majora's Mask, which is sort of notoriously
what?
the darkest entry in the series.
Majora's Mask is
and,
fucked.
I believe it because, like, Breath of the Wild is, like, literally post-apocalyptic, and, like, Link had to watch all of his friends die except for the princess. The only positive is that Zelda might actually be, like, legitimately playable for the first time in the history of the franchise.
Well,
aside from, like, Smash Brothers.
No, the third time playable in the history of the franchise.
The Wand of Gamelon.
Okay, I mean,
and
Zelda's Adventure.
And the other
You're
shitty Zeldas,
the CDI classics.
Yeah, both CDI games.
We're not forgetting them. We're just not legitimizing them.
Oh, okay.
You're a revisionist at your core, aren't you?
You can't just write out the CDI legacy. How does Hotel Mario fit into the canon?
I'm excited for this, obviously. I think Breath of the Wild, I'm just going to go out right out and say it's the best Zelda ever made. For me, I should say. I love that game. I think it's great. I've let it sit in, and but everything they did with it is mwah. It's a little chef kiss. Great, and I'm glad that they're doing more with that world, with that Zelda in particular, because she's the most interesting Zelda, if you ask me. So
actually, I mean, I haven't played this game either, but what about Skyward Sword? She looked like she had an actual personality.
She does, but this one has actual character growth, and
okay.
She has the most character growth that she's ever had in Breath of the Wild, and
the thing is though, she does, but does Zelda ever have character growth outside of Breath of the Wild?
Well, she has an interesting character arc in Skyward Sword, in Twilight Princess,
Wind Waker,
and even in Wind Waker, even in Breath of the Wild. That's the point. Oftentimes she's a substantially more interesting character than Link himself, because Link is a cipher. He's not supposed to have anything but what the player projects onto him. That's why it's so frustrating that you never get to play at her, because she's the star of the show most of the time, and you're just
it's the Legend of Zelda.
Yeah. It's the Legend of Zelda, but in Zelda 1, she's the person you have to save. In Zelda 2, she's asleep literally the whole game. In Link to the Past, you lead her through an escape, and then she's captured for just about the rest of the game.
Twice.
In Ocarina of Time and in Wind Waker, it turns out I was Zelda the whole time. She's captured. It's alright. Skyward Sword, I don't know, I haven't played, but it looks like she's actually doing shit in that game, so that's cool.
Well,
Twilight Princess I had forgotten about, so there's that too.
Not only that, but she has a lot of depth to her. She has negative qualities that she has to work through in Breath of the Wild, which is
that's fair,
unusual.
Because in Ocarina of Time, you meet Sheik and you're like, what an interesting character. Are you kidding me? It was Zelda the whole time, and literally right there, she's captured from a guy who isn't even fucking there. Just a crystal appears around her.
Once she's feminized, she becomes weak.
Yeah, exactly. Tetra. I was Zelda? Gone. Alright. Thanks.
Yeah, and she was the strongest Zelda probably prior to this.
Yeah, she was badass, and then she helped you in the final battle. That was cool as hell. Not the whole battle, but she did something. In Ocarina of Time, she watched. I don't know.
In one of the Zeldas, she's literally dead.
Yeah, that's freaking crazy.
DS one.
Yeah, that was the Spirit Tracks.
Yeah.
Because she's the spirit?
Yeah, exactly.
She's forgot that was a
literally
thing.
Dead.
Wow.
In fact, they even have her make a reference. She's like, "Yeah, I'll just hang out here. I'm the princess. I'm supposed to just kind of hang out while you save the world." Well, that's the thing. And they're like, "No, you have to go help him. You're a spirit. That's
the whole thing. In Breath of the Wild and Skyward Sword, she has a real character. In the other games, she has the potential to be a character, but then it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That's why, it might finally happen, and people are really excited.
Yeah,
we eventually got to that.
We should keep moving, guys. This is a great discussion.
No, I know, but just to be I'm actually serious though here with this. I don't know Breath of the Wild, so I'll take your word on Breath of the Wild. But let's just say, other than Breath of the Wild, literally the most character she's ever had as Zelda has been the fucking CDI game. For real.
Skyward Sword, she had quite a personality too. But,
okay.
Yeah. But anyway, moving on. Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening remake, charming as shit.
Yes. I kind of doubted the graphics when I saw teaser trailers, but now it really does look very good. It looks like a child's playset.
Yeah, I can't wait. I am definitely getting the okay, so the limited edition, if you guys want to take a look at it, yeah, it looks great. It has a 120-page art book. It comes with a game and a steelbook case that looks like the original Game Boy.
No. That's the European version. I think the American version is the same without the steelbook.
Oh, okay. Well, either way,
the European steelbook is one of the better steelbooks I've seen.
It looks really amazing.
Yeah.
maybe I'll have retro gamer pick that up for us, for me anyway. So anyway, that's gonna be great. Have no other. They revealed that there is a dungeon maker included in the game, so you can make your own dungeons.
Nice.
That's particularly cool for that game because it's probably the most expandable Zelda game, because you could have any 2 items equipped at any given time. You did not need to be.
You didn't even need your sword equipped.
Yeah, that's my point. You didn't need to have your sword equipped.
Like, the sword
which
is an
pretty
item.
neat.
It's one of the 2. Like, that's crazy. And, like, has Zelda ever done that since?
Well, I mean, the later games, they let you have the sword and, like, 3 tools. I wouldn't say that it's the most adaptable Zelda game. So...
Well, no, that's true. But that was intense for the time, though. The fact that you could turn your sword off if you wanted, like, a boomerang and a bomb or something, that's crazy.
Oh, it was super interesting. But, like, what stands out to me is more that, most certainly, this might be a trial run for, like, a Zelda Maker to go along with Mario Maker.
Okay.
It seems like the obvious place to go after this.
Well, also the mechanics in that particular game leave it open to unique dungeons, including the ability to jump. Not too many of the overhead games have that ability.
That was something I didn't really realize at first, but, like, in the Mario Kart games, you can get the green Koopa shells, from the Mario games. You can get Invincible from the Star, from the Mario games. But, like, in the original Super Nintendo Mario Kart, if you got the feather, you would just jump once really quick, and I was like, what is that from? And it's like Link's
Super Mario
Awakening.
World.
Was it
No,
Super
it's
Mario
from
World?
Super Mario World.
Okay, because I guess, Zelda and Mario have crossed over a couple times with little references to each other. Was that one of them?
This is definitely from Super Mario World.
Okay,
It's from Super
I'm still
Mario
thinking like the flute in Zelda and the whistle in Mario have the same tune. I was wondering if it was one of those kinds of things.
Yeah, that was probably the first crossover. I'll give you that one. So anyway, we'll keep moving because we got so much to talk about. So this is a huge fan announcement. This was like a fan favorite announcement. Smash Brothers announces 2 new characters, Dragon Quest Hero, and you could be the hero from several of the games.
It was up to 8.
3, 4, 8, and 11, and like 3 is kind of the important one because that's the original Loto / Erdrick, who was like the original Dragon Warrior.
He's the only one with an official canon name.
No, I don't think it's canon. I think it's like
it's canon.
The established name, but I think they're all number names.
No, that's a canon name because it's part of the Dragon Quest story. In 1 and 2, it references him specifically, and it turns out that you become him in 3.
Oh, nice.
So maybe your original name or your birth name is not given, but your legend name is canon.
It's the same as the Suikoden games in the sense that like you're allowed to name the protagonist of the story, but they definitely have canonical names that a lot of people use for things like Let's Plays.
Oh, like so Zelda, like you can name your character, but it's like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. So like I think so the Dragon Quest XI character is always referred to as the Luminary. Obviously, it's called the hero in Smash Brothers because it encompasses 4 people at once, and they're all generically like the hero. In 11, it's because the cutscenes are voiced, so they give the character a generic name. Just like I don't know if you remember Final Fantasy X being the first like voiced Final Fantasy, and like Tidus, you're allowed to name him, but he has a canonical name anyway, and they just like never actually say his name, and they find all these like really awkward wordings for referring to him that sort of
they
like
just say
dance around
him
the fact.
most of the time.
They call him Son of Ject a lot, which is really awkward.
That's great.
So yeah, this is cool. Very neat. The only thing that people were complaining about is that they don't have their gender swap versions.
That was a bit of a surprise.
Kind of, well, not yet anyway. So that might be a thing they might add.
They usually do it too. Like they did it for the Animal Crossing characters. They did it for the Fire Emblem characters. It's we just haven't seen it yet because they're usually 8 skins and not 4. So it's possible that for I think it's Erdrick and Solo, the 3 and 4 ones who actually have a swap variant that you can choose. They might do that.
If you ask me, 4's female hero is one of the coolest looking characters in the series. I think she has a really neat design. She looks kind of like Bulma, but with curly hair.
I'm stunned that they resemble a Dragon Ball character.
but she
Yeah.
she has a stunning look, and I always really like that.
No, they're all very distinct, and I think what stands out to people is that they didn't use the Dragon Quest V hero, which is like actual. Well, I mean, it's complicated because the Dragon Quest V protagonist isn't the quote unquote legendary hero; it's actually his son. But I think that's like, at least in like Japanese pop culture, by a substantial margin, the most popular Dragon Quest game. And like he's present, he's in like the final Smash, but he's not one of the playable characters, so that was a bit surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that. That was like a Mega Man Final Smash where just various iterations show up and contribute to an attack. That was pretty sweet.
And there's quite a lot of them now because there's 11 Dragon Quest games.
Yep.
So obviously, Dragon Quest is a huge part of Nintendo history.
Insanely huge in Japan. It's big enough that I think they're like not allowed to release Dragon Quest during the week because everyone's going to call out of work to play it. I think it actually has to be released on like Saturdays and Sundays.
I've heard this as an urban legend. I'm not actually sure if it's true. It might be just like some of the American like Madden Day in America, where just like there's a lot of lost working productivity.
Well, we'll move on here because this is the even bigger one. Banjo-Kazooie was announced.
Bigger for the West, but yeah.
Well, bigger in terms of like what probably had to take place for them to actually get the character in the game, since it's owned by Microsoft.
Correct. So, like I said before, Microsoft has been playing ball with Nintendo quite a bit lately. So this isn't super, out of left field, but it's also still welcomed and surprising. So this is great. One of the most beloved characters on a Nintendo system that hasn't been allowed to be there. In a long time. So, really cool stuff. I also really like the video in which
I was just gonna say, like that
revealed
is
too.
It's the K. Rool reveal trailer, like shot for shot again. Like that was brilliant.
But with Duck Hunt, which is still really funny.
And they both still do the annoying like teleport all over the screen and laugh at you. That was great.
So like when it reminds me of the and this will maybe segue a little bit into our next thing, when they did the Animal Crossing reveal, and I told you guys about this on the podcast, that like after they did the Isabelle character reveal, they announced the new Animal Crossing game, but they did it in the most like excruciating and infuriating way imaginable, where they had like Tom Nook just like watching the trailer on the screen, and then like the power goes out and he's like playing with his light, like fumbling for the Switch for a while, then he talks for a while, and then finally they announced the game. And this was exactly like that. They showed the Banjo trailer, they showed the Jiggy all the way at the start, you know exactly what's going on. They still make you go all the way through like all this fucking like rigmarole with Duck Hunt, and you know what's going on, like assuming that you're
people
like,
knew it immediately when that Jiggy was on the screen for half a second.
Why are you in this case though? Like I said though, it was the K. Rool trailer shot for shot, so it was kind of like, oh you.
Also, K. Rool, Diddy, and Donkey Kong are roommates and
I
happy
guess.
with it.
Yeah. That was pretty great when DK and Diddy both pressed their faces against the window exactly like the first time, but this time K. Rool joins them. Like, all right, I guess he's just with them now.
It's funny.
It's all the rare characters who are in the game, not necessarily the roommates.
Yep. So we'll keep moving. This is the OldManStompy section. The Animal Crossing New Horizon. They showed a little bit more, and also I believe one of the characters is out of a job now, right?
So I mean, Animal Crossing, for those unfamiliar with the series, had a character called Mr. Rossetti, who existed because Animal Crossing has always been like a huge burden on the save system of the console that it was stored on. So the original Animal Crossing, or the second Animal Crossing, the first one we got in the States for the GameCube, took an entire GameCube memory card. In fact, it was so burdensome that it gave you a memory card with the game. And since it had so much saving to do, and the game could get so screwed up, if you reset the game at any point without saving, this little mole character would pop out, and he would give you a speech about how you should be sure you should save all the time. Because like the game operated on a schedule, and they really didn't want you to like save scum basically to like continually reset, because it would eventually really mess up the systems that assume that you'll be playing the game continuously for a very long time. And like his warnings would escalate continuously if you kept doing it, to the point where he would like force you to write him an apology letter using the game's like dialogue text box, and sometimes he would like manually reset the game. He'd be like, if you love resetting so much, I'm just going to reset your game for you, and he would threaten to wipe your save. And so the new game autosaves and uses the cloud feature if you've subscribed to the Nintendo Online service, so it is no longer necessary for them to worry about Mr. Resetti. And so he will enjoy his retirement, which he should, because the game takes place now on a deserted island, and probably he's just there. And like we've followed him, and he's gonna be all pissed off that we've like that he thinks that he's done with us, and here we are.
So yeah, I thought that was cute. He's one of the more iconic characters, along with Tom Nook, I would say.
Was he the one who just like you were saying he just keeps talking?
He yells at you.
So he's the guy who was the Smash Trophy who just fills the screen with text.
Yes, that's
That's Mr. Resetti.
All right.
Yes, he's a mole with a pickaxe, right?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have anything else to say on Animal Crossing before we move on to plenty of other things?
I will have like more to say when the game comes out. The biggest thing was that it was delayed slightly because I guess there was some hitch in development and they didn't want to overwork their programmers. It was originally intended to come out sometime in 2019 and now it's been pushed to March of 2020. The game looks gorgeous. It looks fantastic. It looks like you have more control over the makeup of your little town, the little island, than you ever have had in the Animal Crossing game before. It looks like a real genuine Animal Crossing game and not like a bunch of mini games with the Animal Crossing logo on it like the last couple games where you actually get to have everybody come visit, you get to make furniture, you get to clear out your town, plant flowers, make paths, all the things that you want to do.
Will they allow you to terraform? Will they allow you to actually form mountains and stuff like that? You think eventually?
I don't know. Usually they don't. That would be a pretty big step up. So Animal Crossing is like SimCity. The game functions the best when it's just a flat plane. So if they allow you to terraform, pretty much everybody would just make a flat land with no water, and they'd all kind of look the same, except for the relatively small handful of people who would choose to be very creative about it. So I can't say that terraforming would be a big deal. They already allow you to make paths and bridges and plant trees. So you do get to construct the scenery. I guess the only thing I would say on top of that is that I guess they're somewhat related. Is that I know that I'll be playing this game for the rest of my life, so I'm sad that it was delayed because that means that 6 months of my life that I won't be playing Animal Crossing, and the rest of it I will be playing Animal Crossing until I die, probably. And the other thing is that shortly after they announced that the game was delayed, and this isn't just because of Animal Crossing, it's a general sense that Nintendo's lineup, in spite of the power of its first-party titles, wasn't really aggressive enough. They didn't announce a Metroid game. I know we'll get to it later, but everybody knows they didn't announce Metroid. And Nintendo's
they already have a Metroid game in the works. They have Metroid.
They do, but it's also
Metroid
we haven't seen it in quite some time, and it was supposedly it underwent a total redesign at some point.
Sure.
And we have no idea when it's going to be coming out. But Nintendo gave this whole speech about how they intended the game to come out in March of 2020 because they didn't want to overwork their development team. They wanted to keep a healthy work-life balance. They didn't want to they didn't want people to fall prey to the kind of crunch that's indigenous both to Japanese culture and generally to game development that we've heard so many stories about in the last few months. And immediately after they announced that, the market valuation Nintendo dropped by $1 billion in the week following E3. So
it'll return. That's a momentary thing.
It will, but it's exceedingly frustrating that you have a company that wants to treat its workers correctly and they're just immediately punished for it, and it's really upsetting.
Well, somebody came out with an analysis of Nintendo's announcements, and literally when they announce anything, their stock price goes down. So I don't know what that. Why?
It tells me that investors are not creative and they don't recognize creativity and they're not
nope.
They're not sympathetic. So I know what you mean. There was such this wave of negative publicity when Nintendo announced the Wii, when they announced the Wii U, when they announced the Switch, and I'm sure the stock went down. Anybody with any degree of faith in Nintendo to know what they were doing and with the brand loyalty that they inspire and their history of putting out incredibly enjoyable products would know that people will buy these games, will have a lot of fun playing them, that'll be way better than it looks like on paper, that they have teams full of genius designers and incredible programmers who just put out game after game every month.
Well,
and you can you can bet on them and you can make a lot of money on the stock market day trading, but that's not how I want to encourage them to make good games.
Sure, and I should also remind people this is basically how the stock market works anyway. A stock is never hotter than on its way to a big announcement. If there's anticipation, people will sell right after the announcement, and it will only go up unexpectedly if something happens that they didn't predict at all. So I should say that when any big announcement that everybody's looking forward to happens, that's with any company. The stock is going to fall down right afterwards because the anticipation's over. That's just kind of the way stock traders work for some, for whatever psychology. But that's the way it is.
I mean,
So we should keep moving on.
I would normally have a lot to say about that, but we'll put a pin in it until later.
Sure. Okay. So Cadence of Hyrule is available now. So this is the Crypt of the Necrodancer spin-off, where you can play as Zelda as well, as Link and Cadence from Crypt of the Necrodancer. So that's really cool. They also put the original game, the Switch version of the original game, on sale for extremely cheap, something like $4 at the same time. So that's really neat. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but apparently the music's amazing.
That was a real surprise. So, like, for example, Northern Lion, who's like a Let's Player of some renown for Binding of Isaac, that's probably the only reason why I know him. His partner, Kate Latorno, was one of the musicians who worked on the soundtrack. So nice. I learned through that the OST for Cadence of Hyrule is full of like these like mid-level independent musicians and like electronica artists who, like, for them to have access to be able to make official Zelda remixes for like a legitimate Zelda title was probably insane. Extremely exciting.
Yeah, and it's really neat that they let one of people's favorite indie games interact with such a beloved series of the first party here. So really, really cool stuff. And of course, as with any Zelda thing, that's going to carry forward in the Zelda lineage in one way or another in materials in the future. So that's really neat. It's going to be set in stone, for Zelda, Zelda volumes to come. They'll mention at least that the game happened, right, which is pretty neat. So you also have. This was a surprise. Cadence of Hyrule we actually already knew about, but it was cool that they said, "Hey, it's available like at the end of the week." Luigi's Mansion 3 was announced with full features and actual gameplay. It looks it's pretty far along.
Is it even spookier?
Yeah, it just might be.
I still have to play Dark Moon.
So Luigi's Mansion 3 was announced some time ago. Like, its existence was announced like last year.
That's right.
I think it was like, so remember that when Luigi was in the Simon Belmont trailer for the Smash Brothers reveal, someone said that he had an unusual looking backpack, and it was in fact the design that would be used in Luigi's Mansion 3, which was in the next Nintendo Direct.
That's great. I love little like Easter eggs ? Like that. Like, that's always pretty cool.
But this will also feature Gooigi from the remake of the first one on 3DS. Nice. So you will be able to use him as a secondary character.
I love that name, cool. By the way.
Gooigi.
I feel like this is a reference to like HAL Laboratories, because the second player in Kirby games when you play cooperative is just Gooey. So like this little goo ball that's supposed to be Kirby's buddy.
That's great.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's like a little blue guy, right? But this is really cool. It looks like a great game. It's made by Next Level, who made the Punch-Out remake and the Dark Moon as well as the football game, the soccer games, right? The Strikers games.
I have no recollection of that.
Yeah, no.
Well,
they made.
I know what the game is, but I have no idea who made it.
No, they made Sega Soccer Slam, and then they went and made the Mario Strikers games.
By the way, the Mario Strikers game has an amazing
the angriest
soundtrack.
Mario.
What?
The angriest Mario on the cover.
I know, but like also like an amazing soundtrack.
Yeah, those games are great. But I'll definitely be picking this up. This is cool. Daemon X Machina or Cross Machina gets a release date announced, which is pretty cool. This game looks pretty neat, but I want to play it because who knows how it plays. That's my only real caution against that game. It has a really cool style, but I want to play that one first. That's the only one I'm not really too sure about.
I appreciate that Nintendo dedicated at least some time, like some significant period of time on the Direct to some new IPs, because we all know that their existing like properties will carry their lineup usually. So for them to take a chance, I think Daemon X Machina actually led off a Nintendo Direct when they first announced it, which is pretty like headlining one of those is a pretty big deal for your development team.
They were advertising the beta, which is still up, I think.
So this and Astral Chains, I think. Now, Astral Chains also has its own lineage as a Platinum Games game, right?
Sure.
So that's definitely something that you consider to be like a pretty solid product when it comes out with a
that got a release date as well. And I can't wait for that because I'm a big Platinum fan, so I'll be waiting for that. This was a big one for us. No More Heroes 3 was officially announced with a really rockin' trailer. Really cool stuff.
Oh, did you see, by the way, Suda51 said his cover image on Facebook to a No More Heroes 3 image, but it's the Akira image where, like, Akira walks toward the motorcycle, but, like, it's Travis walking toward his. I was like, oh, damn, that's, like, that's fantastic.
Yeah, real sexy.
I said where Akira's walking toward the motorcycle, I'm sorry, where Tetsuo, yeah, that faux pas. I think Halo's a pretty cool guy.
But Akira doesn't do much, it turns out.
At least in the movie, I think they might have more to do in the manga. Cause isn't the movie missing like 7 volumes or 5 volumes of the manga or something?
The movie is like the first 2 volumes out of 6, and then
like 5 or
Attacked on ending. On ending. Okay. The manga is the complete version of the story. But anyway, so this looks amazing. It looks like it uses the Joy-Cons, as the method of control.
That's not surprising. That's
motion.
That's its MO. What do you like? Of course it is.
I can't wait. You'll probably be able to like milk the cow.
Yeah, double fisting. Great. Yeah.
I can't wait.
The first 2 games shame you for playing them, so why not the third?
Oh, I can't wait for my girlfriend to walk in on me playing that.
Bryce, what are you doing? I swear to God, I'm playing a mainstream off-the-shelf video game.
They might give you an out, so this is not the first Travis game to be released on the Switch.
That's true.
I mean, so Travis Strikes Again, the top-down beat 'em up. It had the very masturbatory motion for like recharging your lightsaber.
Did
you didn't have to do that. You could like hold down the button, keep the Joy-Cons attached if the system was in portable mode, and just like wiggle the thumbstick, which was significantly less suggestive.
Yes,
but then you don't look at full. Yeah.
I want it to be embarrassing while I play it.
Well, then, boy, do we have the game for you.
I don't have Peach Ball or whatever that is, Senkan Kagura.
Oh, that Senkan Kagura game, yeah.
With a pinball booby game.
Or didn't one of the Galgun games come with a button you could press to make it like safe for work mode?
Yeah, that's based off of like Leisure Suit Larry.
Okay.
One of the like Arts and Elco games had that too. It was like there's like a weather report button.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And like if you did it enough times, you get a trophy that said like Mom, I'm doing my homework or something like that.
That's great. That's fantastic.
So anyway, moving on. There were a bunch of controller announcements, which was pretty cool. Daemon X Machina has its own like set of Joy-Cons that you put on the sides of your Switch that look really neat. Apparently, it has like a bunch of turbo functionalities and buttons specifically for the game, but it still looked pretty comfortable. But it makes your system like, gigantic.
Really big,
yeah. But it is coming to America, which is pretty neat.
It looks like an original Xbox controller.
Yeah, it looks like the Duke
to the side of your Switch.
Yeah, the Duke is what they called it. And the Dragon Quest Slime controller is returning
wouldn't
to
it
the
just
Switch.
melt in your hand? It doesn't sound worth it at all.
So this controller has been floating around for 20 years. It was first released for the PS2, I think, with Dragon Quest 8. I have one of those. That's the only one I have. But it continually resurfaces every time a new Dragon Quest game comes out. Or moves to another system.
I'm excited. I won't buy it, but I like that it exists.
But can you find the exceedingly rare metal slime controller?
Yeah, no.
That's worth way more, and it's hard to catch.
I wouldn't be surprised these days if companies did that. They just one out of every 1,000 slime controllers was a metal slime controller, and there was just like this like golden ticket-esque rush to open all the boxes and find it.
Oh Jesus. Just what we need in this limited run age. And then
speaking of limited run, and a whole bunch of announcements too.
Oh well, we're not even going to get to that this episode.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but Pokeball Plus controller is compatible with Sword and Shield. I'm sure you have more to say about that, OldManStompy.
I mean, I not really. Like, I'm glad that it is compatible. The Pokeball Plus is like a super accessible controller. You can play with basically one hand and a thumb. You know, so it's like one of the easiest ways to play Pokemon. I guess you need like a finger to push the button on the side, but it's like one of the easiest ways to play Pokemon. I think.
Is that similar to the Hori controller from like the PS1? It's like a one-handed RPG controller.
Yeah, it's actually like it's a little earlier than that. Earthbound actually used that control scheme. You could play all of Earthbound using only the left, like the left side of the SNES controller.
Oh, they actually have one of those Hori controller, one-handed controllers for the SNES as well. So maybe it even did use that. Who knows? All right, that's kind of neat. This is the big surprise for old farts here, like me. The collection of mana actually, by some grace of God, actually was released, and it was released the moment it was announced, which is really, really fucking cool. So this is M2's collection that we talked about in previous months, of the collection of the original Mana game, which is Final Fantasy Adventure, Secret of Mana, and Seiken Densetsu 3, which they gave an official English name to, Trials of Mana.
That's great.
And they're remaking it.
And they're remaking Trials of Mana.
Which is actually what led off the announcement, and to me that was like the most exciting part. So the rumor, I think the collection of Mana had been like dated in Australia or something, so there'd been a rumor for a while that it was coming out. And so it's not just like old fogies like you and me. My younger sisters-in-law, who are all like 10, 15 years younger than us, they loved that game when they were children, because it's like one of the golden like Super Nintendo games that you play on an emulator because it's never been available in America. So like when you like everybody who's a fan of like JRPGs has at least like heard of the game. I think a little bit, like Final Fantasy V, Star Ocean, Tales of Fantasia, like all those games that like you always went to download because you thought you'd never get to play them in America. So they were like super stoked about it.
This was one of the very first, ROM hacks, with an English translation to come out, and it's a significant one because a lot of people consider this to be the best game in the series, and we also like missed out on a big part of that series because of that. So not only is it in English, but it's in a bunch of European languages as well. It's in
including English.
Including English. But you can put it in German if you want. You can put it in Spanish.
It's pretty normal for Nintendo, and I think it's more or less a requirement when you're releasing in Europe, if you're planning on doing that you translate to at least 5 languages. I think it's like Spanish, German, Italian, French, and British English.
Well, their headquarters is out of Germany, so they better make it in German.
and I've seen a lot of European games have a bunch of languages on them anyway. But like I've mentioned this before, but one of the like my white whale games for the PS2 is Forbidden Siren 2, because even though you can buy it, it's not like you can't find it or anything. But the thing is, you have to either use a freeloader and play the Japanese game on the PS2, which you can easily do, but it's in Japanese, or you have the European game, which you can't play because it has more data on the disc than a regular DVD can hold because it has all the extra languages on it. So, like, unless you mod your system or something, you would have to, like, torrent the game and delete the other languages from it and burn that onto a regular DVD. It's a process.
Well, getting back to Collection of Mana, this is a huge landmark release, and I firmly believe that this is also something that M2 really pushed for. And M2 has just been knocking it out of the park lately, especially with titles that have never been translated officially before.
Yeah.
So we're very, very lucky to have this. It is kind of an expensive collection. It's 3 games that are all really good, to be honest, and but it's $40, but it's something special. So I didn't mind paying for it.
It's true. It's a little. It was hard for me to justify. Personally, I didn't buy it yet because, like, for example, it's the same price as like the fully 3D remake of The Secret of Mana. And there's a new version of Trials of Mana coming out sometime next year, so it's like hard to justify buying the old one already when I already own like 2 copies of the first one, and I wouldn't even say that the one that came out is the best version because it was remade for the Game Boy Advance like about 15 years ago.
There's a lot of debate. A lot of people still say that the Game Boy version is their favorite.
Yeah, exactly. Well, my for me the debate is settled because the best Mana game is The Legend of Mana.
Yeah,
but...
yeah. But yeah, same thing with Pyro. Pyro loves that one. But it's still really cool. It's undeniable that this is really cool. And apparently, hackers took a look at the ROM, and it is like a genuinely hacked ROM, meaning it's functional. Like if they can extract it and play it on real hardware, if you should so wish.
Nice.
So that's always a bonus, obviously. But I mean, M2's emulation is top notch, so you're not going to be disappointed. Dragon Quest 9 or 11S Definitive Edition release date announced. That we've known it. This is a known quantity, so we don't have too much to say about that.
The big deal is the new soundtrack, right? So
sure.
Or at least that seems like the big
We've
deal
talked
to me.
about
Plus,
that
like
before.
these weird like retro versions of the older Dragon Quest games.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we didn't talk about that. You're right. So there is a 16-bit mode that you could put the game into on the fly, I believe, which is pretty cool. Which basically is a whole nother game, done in pixel art. In the same game done in pixel art at your leisure, which is really neat. So that's going to be the definitive version of that game by far, especially since it's going to have the orchestrated soundtrack by that terrible person who made it. This is a huge deal for me. The Contra Anniversary Collection was made available at the same time as the Collection of Mana. I don't have more to say about that because I went over it, but in length last episode. But it is everything it promises to be, and very much worth your time. But this surprised the shit out of me because when does Konami do anything good? They announced a new Contra game, like a brand new one, called Contra Rogue Corps. And it doesn't have any recognizable old characters in it either. But it looks goofy as shit, kind of like Neo Contra was. It is kind of like a 3D style gameplay, kind of like Neo Contra, almost like a top-down, which is unique. And it's going to be 4-player co-op simultaneous, which is interesting. It sounds like they want to move the series forward instead of keeping it in the past. I'm very interested to see what they do. It could be a train wreck, but I just hope it's great and that they somehow were able to bring the series into the mainstream again by making it kind of like a party-ish kind of game.
It looks like they ate Smash TV and then they released the game.
Yeah. And Neo Contra was like that as well. It basically patterning themselves off of the overhead levels from Super C and Contra 3. But it looks goofy as shit. You could play as a panda.
It's a very, very popular choice for making your game likable.
Yeah. You could play as a girl who is being slowly taken over by a virus from the Alien Wars. So
you get to play as that guy who's becoming a zombie from Zombie's Revenge.
Basically, yeah. There's also another, or like Cable, I guess. Cable has the same thing going on, right? From X-Men. And there's one other character, I forget his deal. I think he's like part alien or something. I don't know. It looks fun. I can't wait. And normal human looking guy.
When is Pliskin gonna make a return?
Well, his name, the main character's name is Kreiser, and that makes me think he's related to Bill Reiser, but I don't know how. But anyway, he looks like Bill Reiser. He's blonde. I don't know. Who knows?
I'll do it.
Who knows? Who knows? The Contra games have gotten progressively goofy ever since Shattered Soldier. So, and I've loved every second of it. So that's cool stuff. Panzer Dragoon remake. We knew this was coming, but we saw actual footage. Looks great. Can't wait for that. Then most of the stuff from here on out is small stuff. So I'm cool with drawing a close, unless anybody else wants to say anything for this episode.
No, I think I'm good for a little while.
I think I covered pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. I mean, it was all downhill from Animal Crossing, but I appreciate you giving me a little time to talk about it.
Oh, sure. So, yeah, this was a really great E3 for me. I know some people said it was disappointing because of, Sony's output, and probably a lot of the other companies' output, but Nintendo knocked it out of the park, I think. Their announcements were all a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I kind of freaked out when I saw everything that they were announcing. It was really cool. Mm-hmm. But I really, really enjoyed it. So what we're going to do this week is we're going to take CoreCon and use that to talk about more news that came out this week, because there's just so much. We reserved this space to talk about the Xbox and Nintendo stuff, but we got plenty more. So please stick around, and we'll talk about our reactions on Thursday. So I will give us an outro, and then we will get going. That is the show for this week. Please remember to subscribe to the Corrective Consciousness YouTube and Soundcloud pages. While there, please give us thumbs ups, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. It helps promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps Lotus Prince play more Kingsfield. You can also catch us on Thursday on our sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, the podcast where we explore the inanity of pop culture. Finally, you can friend me as vysethebold on Steam, PSN, Xbox Live, Twitter, Battle.net, and Switch.
And you can follow me on my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince. You can hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince. And finally, if you are interested in seeing my videos early, getting in on exclusive live streams, selecting upcoming games for me to Let's Play, just finished Alien Isolation, or get involved in conversations with me and other patrons on Discord, then perhaps consider swinging by my Patreon account, which can be found at patreon.com/LotusPrince.
And you can find me as OldManStompy on most major gaming and social media networks, especially the Twitter lately. I don't know what it is about Twitter that I think the main thing is that people don't need to know if something funny pops into my head if I came up with it off the cuff, or if I spent like 6 hours thinking about it.
Yeah, I've actually kind of graduated to Twitter from Facebook. I only kind of use Facebook to coordinate things and
like
to advertise the podcast. Yeah, exactly. So it's just one of those things. That's where I get most of my news these days, because that's where people post it. So anyway, so we'll catch everybody on Thursday.
Until next time, everyone.
Cheers.